Welcome to the Standard of Truth podcast. In this podcast, Dr. Garrett Dirkmott and Professor Richard Leduc explore the early history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the life and teachings of Prophet Joseph Smith. They examine the original historical sources and provide context for events of the past. They approach the history of the Church with faith, expertise, and humor.
Hi, welcome to another episode of the Standard of Truth podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Garrett Dirkmott, and I'm joined by my friend, Professor Richard Leduc.
Hello, Garrett. In this week's episode, we're going to answer a question from a listener about
Gangrenous antelopes?
about an expansion on the Council of 50 Minutes, I do believe. I think that's...
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I've prepared some things.
Okay, well, Richard's ready to... He crossed lances with Janet last week, and now he's ready to lead out on his own.
By the way, my wife supported everything that Janet had said and was on her side the entire time. So.
Yeah, I could have told you that before Janet emailed.
So we have so we'll get into that email in just a sec. The Phoebe Draper Palmer Brown mailbag, but I got a text from one of Becky's friends, Jana. And she said, shout out to the guys on the podcast for the Phoebe Draper Palmer Brown mailbag. Phoebe was married to my fifth great-grandfather, Ebenezer Brown. So
That's
she loves
awesome.
the mention. It's very nice.
That. Thanks for listening, Jana.
Phoebe Draper, Palmer Brown mailbag, reaching far and wide.
Yes, I mean, from one end of the valley to the other. From just the upper Wasatch to the lower Wasatch.
Well, friend of the show, Damien. This is a relative of him, so obviously Jana and Damien.
Well, that means Phoebe
closer.
has a lot of posterity here.
Yeah, at least two,
and at least the two we know of are active.
That
you know what are the odds?
Well, yeah, what a legacy. Yeah, that's good.
You know what? Phoebe right now is like. At least two of my great grandkids made it.
Yeah, she was quite. We need to do. We did one episode several years ago, something like Unsung Heroes of the Restoration.
Yeah,
or little known. She's got quite the story.
It's
fairly incredible.
She's great.
So you also had one that you were going to reference a message that you'd received.
I was going to say that I did receive an email from an old friend, Blake, talking about the podcast. Blake, I'm glad to hear from you. Glad to hear things are going well. Much of the email is centered on the fact that Blake still remembers, being forced to be Russia when we played Axis and Allies in high school.
There was a lot of Shelley talk.
Yeah, lots of Shelley talk, and.
Shelley, Idaho.
Shelley, Idaho. Yes. Yeah.
That's Shelley Thompson, who was also from Shelley.
No. There's only 4 people from Shelley, Idaho, so it's very easy to
you,
tell.
Blake, your mom,
my mom, even my brothers work from there. So a good shout out to him. I had a friend who was listening to the Patrick Henry episode of our premium content who said that listening to the Liberty or Death speech, when we went over that, made him tear his shirt off and pull his car over to the side so that he could go find the closest British person to assault. So, you know what? Premium content. You got to look into that.
You know, so Garrett and I just took Garrett to get some ice cream today, and we went to...
I earned it.
You did. You know what? You did such a good job of that last episode.
He patted me on the head. He bundled me into the car.
Yep. I made him drive, and then he paid for his own ice cream.
It was great.
So we went to Brooker's Founding Flavors Ice Cream. They've got a couple locations down here in Utah County. And I have never seen anyone so excited for anything. You smiled at every flavor.
Because every flavor had a great Founding Father story.
What was your favorite one?
My favorite was the illustration of James Otis being beaten senseless by a British soldier, because that actually happened.
Was it like James Otis peanut butter crunch? What was it?
It was like James Otis something. I can't remember what it was because it was a flavor I didn't like.
Oh.
Because I wanted to get it.
Yeah.
But I mean, whatever it was, I can't remember what it was. Maybe something with toffee or something in it, so I don't like it. Or mint. That's the other. Yeah. Mint.
I love chocolate mint.
Chocolate
ice cream.
mint. No.
Garrett hates it.
Yeah.
Garrett hates that. He hates onions.
I hate onions. I hate mint chocolate ice cream. I hate anti-Mormonism. I hate Governor Ford. I hate.
In that order, though, by the way.
No,
Chocolate,
John C. Bennett. I hate
chocolate?
most. I hate John C. Bennett.
John C. Bennett, then mint chocolate.
John
ice
C. Bennett, Phalassus Hurlbut, Thomas Ford,
mint chocolate ice cream.
William McClellan, then mint chocolate chip ice cream.
Yeah. Then onions, then Lilburn Bogs.
And then Wilbur. No. I hate onions way more than Wilbur Bogs. It can't just be right above it. It makes me sound like I'm an incredibly picky eater, but
No, those are the two things. Those are your two.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
so anyway, this place is great. And like with Jersey Mike's, not a sponsor of the show.
No,
but
would be horrified to know that we even mentioned it.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I mean, it was
The ice cream
incredibly
was
delicious, but all the ice creams are named after founding fathers. And so James Otis, if you aren't signed up for the premium, now we know that Janet is.
She was.
Right? Well, she was until she listened to last week's episode. You know, one of the things that I was really proud of Richard, because while we were taping that episode, and it makes it sound like we are in some kind of professional studio. Yeah.
What year is
They
this?
were using tape.
Hey, play back the tape.
No,
tape.
I need you to. Where's the 8mm? I need you to rewind it back. And I got things on the mimeograph machine, and we made copies. And so while we're trying to record last week, Richard is he's trying to watch a college football game.
Well, it was Georgia Tech, Louisville.
Yeah,
Oh, you just swallow it.
Yeah,
That's
no
how they
L.
pronounce it in
Yeah.
Kentucky. Louisville. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, as we're watching it,
well, Garrett's talking.
yes,
and I'm watching.
but then
the
I ask him offhandedly, what's the line on the game?
Again, we'd like to refer you to President Hinckley's.
President Hinckley's talk. Please don't gamble. Richard, of course, is not a degenerate gambler, even though he plays one.
I play
on
one
TV.
on TV. That's right.
He says it's Louisville 7.5. So Louisville is picked to win by 7.5 points.
Currently losing by 5, by the way, at the time.
Yeah. I ask Alexa what the line on the game is. Literally 7.5 points. And I don't know what was more impressive, how accurate he was on a game of two teams that were terrible last year.
So I couldn't possibly care less about.
That likely won't go to a bowl game this year. Like, whoever wins that game, that'll be that and one game against, Stanford that they put in the win column.
We're so excited for Stanford to be in the ACC.
No,
That's
Stanford.
Oh,
with the M. Yeah. No, not Stanford. Stanford.
Oh, Stanford, yes.
Yeah. And but if he was more excited about that, or that he'd gotten it right. I mean,
Well, and talk about a bad beats moment for people that took Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech fumbles the ball.
They were dominating.
They were dominating the entire game. They fumbled. Garrett was talking about the reorganization of the Quorums of the 70 as I was watching the game, and you had Georgia Tech fumbles. Louisville gets the ball back. They're up by 1. Then they get a 74-yard rushing touchdown the next play. Win by 8 points.
Covered it. Yep.
Yeah. Good teams win. Great teams cover.
Yeah, and if there's anything on Standard of Truth podcast that brings the spirit into your home, that helps you understand more about the kingdom of God on earth, it's
good teams win. Great teams cover.
Yeah, and we want you to be a great member of the church. We don't want you to just show up to church. We want you to be the church.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, so it was funny. I guessed on that number, and Garrett thought that was very funny, as did I.
No, I thought your reaction was very funny. You were happier that you had guessed the line right than when your son was born.
Well, we have 4 sons, so
the one you know the one.
yeah, right. Yeah. Well, that one, I wasn't happier on the pick.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why.
Yeah. I do say that. It's a joke that I make that my wife doesn't think is as funny. When I'm really excited about something or I really love something, like the Founding Flavors ice cream. It's like I love this ice cream more than the birth of 2 of my 5 children.
And then she wants you to enumerate which one.
All right, so to Brian's email.
Yes.
To the Phoebe Draper
the Phoebe...
Palmer Brown mailbag. This comes to us from Brian. Since I'm not a policeman nor one of your relatives.
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
And my name, and so we did receive an email from our favorite Idaho policeman.
We have to keep him nameless. I mean, eventually people are going to figure out who he is because there's only 5 policemen in Idaho, but he's one of them.
Yes, he's our favorite, and
he's the only one who listens.
He's got a great email, but it's a little bit lengthy, so we'll have to get to it next.
Look, we got to keep him anticipating. I mean, he's single-handedly driving up the arrests of meth offenders in Idaho because just to have people in the back of his car to force them to listen to the podcast.
Good police arrest, great police make them listen to our podcast.
Yeah, that's what we want him to know.
And my name isn't Bill. I feel like I have to.
That's funny. Yeah, by the way.
I feel like I have to name drop to catch your attention. I was in BYU's first Nauvoo semester study program with Milt Bachman.
Bachman.
Oh, it's Bachman?
Bachman.
Not Bachman? I was thinking of Bachman Turner Overdrive. You ain't seen nothing yet.
Baby, you ain't seen nothing.
Yeah, so Milt Bachman. Pardon me.
Although, you know what? Maybe he probably could do a cover for...
Yeah. Milt's BTO. Back in winter semester 94, Stephen Harper was also a student in that
That's pretty
group.
Impressive.
Brother Bachman was my neighbor after that, and I loved speaking with him about Joseph Smith. He could get really enthusiastic doing so. In fact, I think Garrett is the only historian who ever comes close to speaking with the same energy as Brother Bachman when he's talking about the prophet.
Oh, that's very kind.
My wife and I have been listening since the Follow Him podcast, and have listened to every episode, many of them several times. Well, thank you for getting our downloads up.
Yeah, thank you.
You know what's interesting? Follow Him is mentioned a lot in the emails that we receive. It's almost like it's a much better version of what this is.
More popular and
more
better
faith promoting,
guests.
fewer gambling references.
Yeah, you don't ever hear them talk about what the line on the Georgia Tech game is from 4 weeks ago.
I would give anything to have Hank Smith make a sports gambling joke.
You know what? I'm going to talk to him about it. I'm gonna let him know.
Even better, John. By the way, I couldn't even see it.
Maybe we can get one of their producers to just dub that in.
Well, so just even last. So also one thing that's never happened to me, and this happens to me in every Sunday meeting I ever attend, Sunday school for sure, and sacrament meeting as well. First counselor on our stake presidency spoke in our ward last week, mentioned the Follow Him podcast. Standard of Truth has never been mentioned in any context like that. I can't imagine. It's interesting. Follow him all the time.
Yeah. It's almost like they're better than us.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Speaking of gangrenous antelope, the Standard of Truth podcast. My missionary daughter also loves them and helps her answer questions. We've introduced lots of people to your podcast. Well, thank you very much, Brian. That's very nice of you. Richard, we loved hearing that your family motto is "Don't embarrass the family." Ours is a line from Finding Nemo: "Good feeling gone." So it's good.
Probably there's a story behind that.
I bet there is. Yeah. About Lilburn Boggs family history records. Well, you are joining the ranks of joining Brother Bachman and Harper. I became a computer guy and worked for the church for a while. I knew a person in the family history department. Once I asked him about church's response to criticism about doing temple work for Holocaust victims. He explained that there is a growing list of historical figures for whom an individual needs to show that they are a descendant before performing temple work. He then continued with this example. Did you see in the news that Whitney Houston just died? A year from now, how many times do you think her name will be submitted for temple work by loving church members who are her fans, but not family? So we add her name to the list. If someone submits her information, they will be encouraged to work on their own lines. Of course, if they are direct descendants, the work will move forward family members have priority for family ordinances over fans.
Well, so that means there is a workaround, right? You just need to share the gospel with one of her kids, get them converted, but then also convince them to have you do the work.
Yeah.
And maybe it won't work.
Well, maybe it will.
You know what? Try to share the gospel with everybody. That's what I think.
From strangers to Bobby Brown.
Well, I don't think Bobby Brown.
Well, you never know. You never know.
You never know.
That's
okay,
right.
You never know.
Do I actually have a question? You know how people frequently ask and ponder, if you could ask God one question, what would it be? Well, I frequently ponder what I would ask you guys. My question is, from a historian's point of view, what is the difference between true, so true, and a breathy, so true? I don't know how breathy that was.
That wasn't breathy enough.
Very poorly.
You were far more breathy when Georgia Tech fumbled that ball.
I couldn't believe that.
Yeah.
That was incredible. Actually, I love the insights you pointed out from the Council of 50. I have been taught that there were some struggle between the Council of 50 and the Quorum of the 12 about who should be in charge of the civil matter of moving the saints west, and that this was one of the questions behind the need for Section 136. Verse 3 clarifies that the 12 were in charge. Could you give more insight on that? How long did the Council of 50 persist after that? Was that just a Nauvoo thing? Thanks for sharing your laughter and testimonies, Brian. Thank you,
Very
Brian.
nice.
Very nice,
Yeah.
Brian.
I'm glad that you dropped enough names to get us to finally to read your email.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually a great question. I would say the Council of 50 is one of the least understood aspects of Latter-day Saint history from that time period. For those of you whose eyes are glazing over right now, this is the reason why. But in part, it's because we don't really talk about it a lot. For a long time, we didn't talk about it because it was kind of a trivia answer. It was something that didn't seem to have a huge impact on the church currently. That was really important if what you were studying is how exactly did the church prepare for the exodus out of the United States. But also we didn't have access to the minute book. The Council of 50 minute books were kept by William Clayton, and he was supposed to, at one point, destroy them because they didn't want them falling into enemy hands when they're being driven out of Nauvoo. Instead of destroying them, William Clayton buries them in his garden. And apparently William Clayton is as lax a gardener as I am, and they weren't destroyed completely, and he dug them back up and made copies of them. So we have them. But just now, look, we have, I think, several episodes on the Council of 50
Yeah,
minutes.
3 or 4 episodes.
Yeah,
on
like
the Council.
9 episodes on the
Well,
Council.
there's a lot there.
There's
yeah.
a lot. There is a lot there. There's all kinds of cool teachings there. It is the newest major document that we have in the church because it's hundreds of pages long that were never previously published until they were published with the Joseph Smith Papers Project.
It's kind of like our version of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Right. It's the Latter-day Saint Dead Sea Scrolls. It's wait a minute, that says homoi, or whatever. But so the question though is about the Council of 50's power. This really is a good question because the power in these councils starts to kind of run together. So you get this group of men in Nauvoo after 1842 and women who have all been endowed, right? Joseph's given them this early endowment, and they meet as a group of people, these people who've been endowed, as opposed to people who haven't been endowed. And so some people call this the quorum of the anointed, right? That they're getting together and they're meeting. You have Joseph creating the Council of 50 as well in early 1844. And its purpose is twofold: to, first of all, help electioneer for Joseph Smith's presidential campaign, which again, we have another podcast on that if you want to go back and listen to it. It's probably not very good, but it might be. There are parts of it that...
Actually, that one was pretty good.
Was it?
That one was really interesting.
In the face of all other logic and reason.
It was was really interesting as you got, there were so many things that you might not have thought of otherwise, and you contextualize
Well, there you go.
the different platforms.
See,
Most of the
at least
stuff
Richard's
you do,
downloading it.
well, I haven't listened to it. It's just
Okay.
I remember the
Yeah.
time we did
you
it.
just had to put it on the web.
Yeah,
I
that's
see.
right.
Yeah. Well, so this group, this Council of 50 group, to electioneer for Joseph Smith, but also primarily to seek out a place for the Latter-day Saints to leave the United States and to go create the kingdom of God on earth, to go somewhere else where there was not an existing government, or at least one that didn't have power over it, where they could live the gospel and prepare for the second coming of Jesus. So this council is made up of various people. It's actually made up of some non-members in the group. And Joseph wants to make particular mention that, look, this is preparing for the kingdom, for the coming of Jesus. And you don't have to be a Latter-day Saint to prepare for that. So there's actually 3 members of the Council of 50 that aren't even Latter-day Saints. But all of the quorum of the 12 are also members of the Council of 50. So now you can start to see pretty quickly, well, what's a Council of 50 responsibility and what's a quorum of the 12 responsibility? And how easily are those things going to become meshed up in one another when you're talking about the same things? Guess what else the quorum of the 12 is working on? Getting the saints ready to leave to go to outside of the United States. After Joseph Smith is murdered, this distinction becomes a little bit more difficult to make. And you're thinking, well, how could it be more difficult to make? Well, because the head of the quorum of the 12 apostles, Brigham Young, is now the head of the Council of 50 as well. He's the chairman, as they call him, of the Council of 50. And so there are some things discussing the movement west that take place in the quorum of the 12 meetings, for which we have some minutes for. There are some things that take place in the Council of 50, and sometimes they overlap over one another. Joseph's death left this kind of vacuum in the church that even though the vast majority of saints in Nauvoo follow the quorum of the 12, and nearly all of the apostles support Brigham Young as the rightful leader of the church, there are other people who are going to claim authority come from other directions. And I think what you happen to be referencing, Brian, in particular, is the case of George Adams. So George Adams is not a founding member of the quorum of the Council of 50. He's not an apostle. If you're wondering, wait a minute, is this guy also a member of the quorum of the 12? Nope, he's not. He is a firebrand of sorts. He's actually a very interesting figure in early church history. He's from New York City. He gets baptized by Parley Pratt in 1840, and he is on multiple occasions will engage pastors of other faiths in public debates about the church, and appears to be quite the rhetorician. I mean, he appears to be able to there's even some non-Latter-day Saint sources that talk about how they're kind of embarrassed by the fact that this Mormon was able to put their guy to shame. If you're going to talk about it, you got to talk about it better than that. So George Adams has a pretty dynamic personality, but he's also got a little bit of troubles. He is at least accused at one point of committing some various sins, up to including adultery on a mission out in the East. Now he's going to eventually be absolved of those things.
It seems like this is happening all the time.
That everyone's committing adultery?
Every time you talk about anybody ever going on a mission that isn't an apostle, I swear they're committing adultery out in the East. When they
I mean, what are you going to do? You're on your mission.
Yeah. They're not in Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be way different than. Yeah. So people are listening to them.
So maybe it just seems like, but this seems like it's a problem that is fairly
See, I think you just recognize it as a problem more because I was thinking, I don't know, we sent lots of missionaries home from our mission.
Yeah, it's not normal to commit adultery on your mission.
So here's what I would say. It's not that so many people are committing adultery on their missions. It's that all of the ones who do also seem to want to go form their own church.
I see. Okay.
So
there's more about them. There's more information because they're doing their own thing.
Yeah.
They're not like going out and just planting
like Philosophy.
their acre in Quebec somewhere.
Yeah, their 1 acre that they never enlarged over the course of 200 years. Anyway, so George Adams is there is a little bit of like, hey, what's going on there? There is a little bit of he needs to be called on the carpet. But by and large, he's seen as someone faithful to Joseph. He is particularly enamored, I think, by Orson Hyde's dedication of the Holy Land. And so he is going to, he's going to really think about that. It's going to work on him for the course of time. Right before Joseph dies, Joseph is going to appoint him to go on a mission to Russia. Okay, so we were going to get some missionaries there into Russia, right? But then Joseph dies and everyone is recalled. So at first, George Adams is going to support Brigham Young in Brigham Young's, that Brigham Young should be the leader of the church. Over the course of the next several months, once you get into early 1845, however, it becomes apparent that George Adams is looking for another horse to back, that he is gravitating different places. Now, one of the first people who gives us some indication that this isn't working out the right way is Wilford Woodruff in late 1844 sends some letters home where he's like, hey, George Adams is telling people that he's the 13th apostle and that he's so now there's just an extra apostle.
He's
right?
Paul.
He actually does call himself that.
Get out of here.
He does. Did you read this?
No, of course. I do know.
So
I do
you
know
haven't
show
read
prep.
So you haven't read all of the Council of 50 Minutes and
No, I do no show prep. It's obvious.
Okay,
I don't
right.
even read these emails. Is why I read them so poorly.
Yeah, well, according to Becky, you don't have the ability to read.
According to Becky and also anyone that's listening to me read them poorly.
Do you think there are people listening that are like, I just wish Hooked on Phonics?
Yeah, they're rooting for me. They're rooting for me to get it. They're like, hey, this is, you know what? You're going to do
like
it this
Janet's
time.
rooting for you to not get it.
I don't know.
Rachel's mom, she's rooting for you.
I don't know. I feel like Janet and I are really good friends now. After I
kind of want to go to lunch with her.
I would love to go to lunch.
I'd
with
love
Janet.
to hear her give you the business.
Her email was hilarious.
It was
she was
very
giving
funny.
me the business.
We have to reiterate just how funny everybody is. I mean, our tour that we went with people from, it was my sides hurt from laughing so much. And we had all kinds of humor. We had the in-your-face humor. We had the dry.
Oh, the dry.
The clay humor.
Yeah.
I mean, just.
The Brothers Wilson humor was very
good. Oh, yeah. The Brothers Wilson. That sounds like a nursery rhyme.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was pretty hilarious as they used PhD humor on us. But also tried to let us know that they had better PhDs than us, which they did.
So much better.
They're a lot better than we are. So it makes me excited about our tour that we're going to be doing in.
Actually, it might have already gone live by the time this podcast.
If that tour's already gone live, it's going to already have been sold out by the time this podcast comes out. It's possible. We've had so many people contact us. We're doing 2 tours. One that's going to
starting in
Baltimore and going to Kirtland, so it's going through New York and all those places, and one that's starting in Jackson County in Kansas City, going through the Missouri sites, and then going up to Nauvoo, and then back down through the Lincoln Library.
So we should have the website updated with those tours in the next couple weeks if it's not there already.
Yeah, if it's not already there. Yep. So if you're interested in joining us, it honestly was ridiculously fun. I mean, I'm kind of giddy just thinking about it because it was so fun. At any rate, What was I talking about? George Adams and his...
I think you're talking about people signing up for the premium episodes.
Oh, yeah. We also need people to sign up for the premium episodes. I feel like...
Anytime you ever ask me what we're talking about, I'm going to talk about the tour or the premium
I
content.
feel like
or
you want
signing
this
for
to
the
be like
Substack.
the Ronco electric food dehydrator.
Set it and forget it.
Yeah,
Garrett.
that's what you want. You want us to be like, this is the perfect way to dry fruit. But so Adams is apparently telling people, it was the fact that you guessed this. Yeah, that you guessed. He does. Wilford Woodruff says that he's calling himself Paul, that he's the 13th apostle, and that he's been appointed to be the spokesperson for Joseph Smith. Right?
Oh, my.
So when these things get back to Nauvoo, it is a little troubling. And he's actually going to be, he's going to be dropped from the Council of 50. And then he's actually going to be brought up on charges whether or not he's even going to be able to stay in the church. We have the minutes of one of those hearings from March of 1845, and I'm just going to read some of them. So these are they're the Nauvoo Stake High Council minutes. Okay, so these are the minutes essentially of the court there. President Brigham Young then said that we want to take into consideration the case of Brother George Adams, who is now present. So Adams is there for this. I have objected to Brother Adams' conduct and to the course that he has taken, and shall tell them here first when Brother Adams came home. I'm reading this in cursive.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I cannot make out one word that is being said.
Probably I should have made a typescript of this first. You want to talk about poor show prep? Okay, look. I did go pull up the original source of the Nauvoo Stake High Council minutes.
Yeah, it's not bad.
I just don't have the ability to read it, right? Anyway, Adams' conduct as the course that he had taken, and shall tell them here. First, when Brother Adams came home last fall, I asked him if he had any money for the temple. He said that he had handed everything to William Smith. Since then, William Smith wrote and said that he had sent money and clothing by Brother Adams to the temple. So kind of like, ooh, talk about your all-time backfires. Apparently, William Smith, because part of what they're doing on their missions is they're trying to collect money to complete the temple. They're gathering clothing, they're gathering money, and Adams shows up and they're like, oh, hey, do you have stuff for the temple donation? Oh, yeah, William has it all. But William Smith has already written a letter saying, hey, by now George Adams should be there with the money that I sent for the temple. So now that's kind of a problem, right? So not that William Smith is the greatest source. In fact, in about 4 months from now, he's going to turn into the worst possible source. But right now, he's still engaged in trying to finish the temple. So since then, William Smith has wrote and said that he sent some money and some clothing by Brother Adams for the temple. We have not got it. I have also been told that Brother Adams has frequently read some kind of note before the people, which represents him as having been some great authority over everybody else, and also that he was appointed Joseph's spokesman. I have been told that Brother Adams says the church owes him something from $600 to $1,000 in money.
Well, it sounds like you already skimmed off the top a little bit.
You know what? Maybe that's what it was. It was like, well, I know I borrowed $1,000. Well, I'll just not give him these 20 cents in temple receipts, and then that'll do it. I've been told $600 $1,000. Now I want to know if Brother Adams can explain these things and whether he is satisfied to have the matter investigated before this council. Brother Adams then went on to explain to the council relative to the above charges. He denied having said that he was appointed Joseph's spokesman. He explained about the temple money and said that he was willing to meet any committee this council might appoint and settle the whole account with them. He also explained how the church owed him money. President Young then preferred some other charges relative to his conduct in the East. To which, after many remarks on both sides, Adams pled guilty and begged for mercy.
Oh,
So it kind of seems like things are,
yeah.
they're looking up.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Well, he's repenting and
Yep, there
great.
you go.
he's taking his VIG.
Many,
That's a gambling term, by the way. That's what the house gets to take the bet.
right. So,
Similar here is
but-
what I assume
but
he's doing.
but you wouldn't ever gamble.
No, I just know that that's what it's called.
You're right. In order to understand your adversary, you should study them. And sometimes you have to study them on the most minute details. You have to know everything about them.
The VIG.
Yeah. Anyway, many remarks were made by the sundry individuals, substantiating the charges preferred by President Young, each one expressing a strong desire for Brother Adams' salvation. So the minutes of the meeting are, look, everyone wants him to be saved. They want him to repent. They want him to change. So you can kind of sense the sense of love here. Now, I think some people might hear that and say, well, I'm not okay with, with Brigham Young, speaking so directly to him. Well, this is a church court, and Brigham Young's telling him what charges have been levied against him. So I know that sometimes we think to ourselves, well, wouldn't it be better if you just danced around it? If Brigham was like, hey, so how's that money going for like the temple and stuff that you collected but then never gave to the church? Yeah, I mean, you could do the passive aggressive Brigham, but the reality is he's being charged for it. And so you have to say what's actually going on.
So there's something beautiful here, though, where here, as they're writing this, that they want for his, they want for him to come back. And in any good church council that you have, that's what you always want. That's what the Savior would want. That's what you're trying to reflect. And you had said here, I mean, when he was good, he was
great.
He was great. And they know him as that and want him to be back.
They're
the spokesman
only,
for Joseph.
They don't want him to be that. There are only 50 people in the Council of 50, surprisingly. You know what I mean? So actually there's technically 52 because they have one that's a recorder and one that's a secretary, but they attend every meeting.
Oh.
Anyway, so it's not everybody who's invited to be in the Council of 50. They invite the people that they think are the most dynamic, the most able to push forward a cause of creating a kingdom of God on earth, a physical kingdom, an actual government, because they plan to move out of the United States to the middle of nowhere. Sorry for everyone who lives in Utah. And that there they'll establish a government that will be in operation when Jesus returns. And so, yeah, they clearly want to be able to save George Adams. And in fact, they render this decision. After spending much time in investigation, President Young arose and said that he wanted Brother Adams to sit down and to write that he has done wrong and that he asked for forgiveness and that he is willing henceforth to listen to counsel and to do right without incriminating anyone else. Also, that the proper authorities of this church are here and that he is with the 12 and will be with them to bear off this kingdom. I want Brother Adams to write this freely and confess his iniquities. A man's confession will never do him hurt unless he turns round and does wrong again. So despite these many different charges that are preferred against him, I mean, we're talking embezzlement of church funds, claiming that he has more authority than the church, claiming to be an apostle when he was never ordained to be one, claiming that he has a note from Joseph naming him as a spokesperson. These are some pretty high crimes going on here as far as the church is concerned. And all Brigham Young wants him to do is just write it out and say, I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have done this.
Wow.
And so he actually makes the way back pretty easy. Now, coinciding with that, of course, like I said, the Quorum of the 12 and the Council of 50 meetings, those are going on at roughly the same time. And so what happens? Well, at the Council of 50 meetings that follow that hearing, now Now, he hasn't been fully restored yet. He's still got to write his stuff out. He's got to return his homework. He's got to turn in his project on time.
Not pay the money back. Just say he took it. That's pretty sweet.
You know what? It doesn't say that
he didn't say restitution.
No, he just said, I don't know, write out that you stole it from us. We'll give you the priesthood back. I don't know. I don't know what was going on.
I got to tell you, I would love a disciplinary council from Brigham Young.
Maybe not.
Oh, no?
There are times, I mean.
That is interesting, right?
It is kind of a caricature that people have of Brigham Young. I mean, because all you ever hear is some kind of weird soundbite or whatever some anti-Mormon wants you to hear.
Wait, but
you don't know the man at all.
But even the nickname Lion of the Lord, right? Like that.
Yeah, but he's a lion of the Lord defending the church against its enemies.
Sure, but the idea of him
makes people think that.
Yeah.
But the reality is Brigham's ever ready to forgive people who repent. He's always willing to forgive people. So this question is then brought before the Council of 50 because they're deciding whether or not they're going to let him back into the church. But the Council of 50 has to decide because they've dropped him from the Council of 50. And so now they have to have this conversation, whether or not the council is going to take into consideration the case of Elder George Adams. He has been dropped by this council. He was tried before the High Council last Saturday, and he wants to be saved. I am well satisfied that he will not betray us, and whether or not it would be the best for her to reconsider his case, and if it is agreeable to have him reinstated. So again, here's Brigham Young taking him at his word. He says he's penitent. He says he wants to be saved. Yes, he's caused us a lot of problems, but I think we need to let him back. Now, not everybody feels the same way because a lot of people are really upset by some of this stuff this guy has done. Joseph Fielding, which kind of sounds like a pretty familiar name to some of you, and it should. Joseph Fielding will say that his feelings were very unfavorable towards Brother Adams. He has not seen Adams lately, but he's heard some very bad reports about him from a source which he thinks can be relied upon. Wilford Woodruff. So, I mean, yeah, you can kind of, Wilford Woodruff could be relied on. Heber C. Kimball then responds and says that Brother Fielding's ideas are the effects of mere report about a circumstance which Adams explained. And he went on and he related the circumstance. Counselor Bent, so Samuel Bent he's actually the president of the stake. He's the stake president. So he actually was presiding over this Nauvoo Stake High Council meeting. Now, of course, he surprisingly gives way to the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, who's also there, but he is the one technically.
So he's presiding and he's like, hey, Brigham, what do you think?
Yeah. Hey, man. Hey. Anyway, Counselor Bent said that after hearing Elder Adams' remarks and confessions before the High Council last Saturday, which we just read, so now you've just heard them, he felt to forgive him. He feels like sustaining him as a member of this council. Now, it is interesting, right, that the thing that everybody is most attuned to in late 1844 and early 1845 is apostasy of people rejecting that the keys are really with the Quorum of the 12. Someone claiming that they have more authority than the Quorum of the 12 is a really big deal. And yet you'll notice the people who are in the meeting, just like Richard said, their point isn't to condemn the guy. Having heard it all, he feels like we should sustain him as a member of this council, is what Ben says. Newell K. Whitney says, it's true that Elder Adams made some good promises, but he has not yet complied with the decision of President Young. So he hasn't written it out yet. He thinks it would be wisdom to wait until Brother Adams has complied with the decision. Well, look, he has to do this to repent. Why don't we wait till he does it? And we'll all expect him to do it, and we hope that he'll do it. So let's just wait till then. So George A. Smith moved that we rescind the vote on Elder Adams' case and give the chairman the privilege of exercising his own judgment in the matter. Willard Richards had the same view with Newell K. Whitney, but he should agree to what the head had said. W.W. Phelps said, that he was of a mind with the others, that he would be better satisfied to wait a little while before we act on this case. We want to be merciful, inasmuch as Elder Adams wants to be saved, and we hold the powers of life and death, but he still thinks that we had best wait a little while. Newell K. Whitney said that he had no feelings towards Brother Adams but the best kind, but he felt as though it would be best to wait until he complied with the decision. Joseph Fielding said to the same effect. Lucian Foster has a feeling of affection for Elder Adams. He was acquainted with him before Adams embraced the gospel. So this is someone who knows Adams. He knows old Adams. He feels desirous to see him get all the good he can, and he believes Adam will never betray this council nor any member of it.
So how many of these folks have been on the mercy side of these things as you're reading through it? Have any of these folks, experienced
where they had to beg for some mercy? Well, one of them.
So that's what
one
I'm
of them's
saying.
W.W.
Well,
Phelps.
that's what I'm saying.
Like, I think it's probably okay.
Well, but as you were reading his comment, it seemed something that was coming, that was sincere from his heart. Where when you have felt that, those feelings of.
Well, you look at someone
mercy.
like Newell K. Whitney. He is, talk about a lion of the Lord. Newell K. Whitney, he puts that hand to the plow and he never looks back. But he also gets chastised by the Lord through the prophet Joseph Smith through when he does make poor decisions, right? So, the reality is there's, what level of chastisement are you talking about? Brigham Young has had to repent, but has he ever returned against the church? I think really you're looking more at W.W. Phelps when you're looking at that.
But that's what I'm saying. So when you read what he says, it seems like somebody that has been on the other side and has had mercy extended and seems quick to want to extend mercy himself.
And he certainly did. What's interesting, though? What was Joseph Fielding's initial impression? What was he? He was the one who said what? The first thing he said was, I don't feel good towards him at all. And I don't think we should let him back into this council. And after hearing the other people's testimony, Joseph Fielding changed his position. This is what he said originally. Joseph Fielding said his feelings were very unfavorable towards Brother Adams. He has not seen Adams lately, but he has heard some very bad reports about him, which from a source that he thinks can be wrong. So that's what he said initially. His first comment was, I don't feel good about him at all. I've heard all kinds of garbage about him. And then he hears these expressions of mercy from other people. And what does Joseph Fielding say? After Newell K. Whitney says that he had no feelings towards Brother Adams but the best kind, but he's felt as though it would be the best to wait until he complied with the decision. So instead of Newell K. Whitney saying, look, I think it's fine to let him back in once he does what President Young told him he needs to do. He needs to write out what he did and say that he's sorry, and then we'll let him in. And at that point, Joseph Fielding says he agrees with Newell K. Whitney and W.W. Phelps. So he went from this very hard position to hearing what the others were saying, and he softened quite considerably. He went from absolutely not to, okay, all right, if he confesses.
But I think that's something that we can relate a little bit, right? As we hear things, as we feel the Spirit, I can't help but to be softened on feelings.
Well, I can tell you as a professor, when I talk, I say, "Oh, had the days been the days of our prophets of old." No, I say things like, "Oh man, if I ever caught a student cheating, I would flunk them like crazy." You know what I mean?
Right.
And then you catch them, and
then they're super penitent.
Yeah. And you just, now sometimes they're not penitent. Those are the easy ones.
Yeah, those are the easy ones.
There are times you catch people cheating who will say that they weren't cheating and then get mad at you for having caught them cheating. Like literally will be yelling at you. How dare you accuse me of cheating? And as you hand up the paper that they printed off of Wikipedia, and that it even still says Wikipedia on the paper that they printed and that they handed it as their paper. That's happened, And then they're like, oh, and then they suddenly become penitent when they realize they can't just yell and scream at you. But Foster's comment here at the end, though, he says he has a feeling of affection for Elder Adams. He feels desirous to see him get all the good he can. He goes on to say that such men are scarce. Remember I told you, Adams has this like native ability. Such men are scarce, and he would wish the council to try him again. He don't know, but Adams may be the means of getting us into difficulty again. He is not wise. Very. So remember, Foster's the only one who knows Adams from before he was a member of the church. And it's interesting that while he loves him, he's also speaking a little bit of truth here that, guys, I can't guarantee you if we let him back in that he's not going to go do stupid things again. Because he does stupid things. I know him. He did stupid things before he was a Mormon. It's not surprising he does stupid things now that he's a Mormon, right? And so that kind of like little thing, he's not wise. Yeah, it's got a little thing. Well, in point of fact, the person who knew him best, knew him better than Mercy did. They do want to grant him mercy, but Adams never complies with what Brigham's asked him to do, and very shortly thereafter is going to leave and is going to claim that James Strang is the rightful leader of the church. And so he will then actually bounce around a lot of ways. And back to Brian's email, one of the things that Adams is going to claim is that the keys of the kingdom are actually held by the Council of 50. Adams is a member of the Council of 50, so he therefore has the same authority as Brigham Young. How much that plays into what's going on in D&C 136 certainly has something to do with it. Another person who's going to pull rank here is a guy by the name of Alphaeus Cutler, who will later claim he has authority because he's a member of that high council. But the reality is there are lots of reasons why the Lord is going to make it very clear that the quorum of the 12 apostles are the ones who are supposed to have this authority. Now, Adams, he's not the only member of his family. And as he pursues this James Strang plan and denounces the quorum of the 12 and claims that he has more authority than the quorum of the 12, guess he couldn't quite write that out, his brother, Elias Adams, not to be confused with a good brother in my former ward. I think he's no longer in that ward, though, because the ward shifted.
Well, no, he's no longer in our stake. He's in a different stake.
Did he move, or did everything shifts around?
He was a bishop. I mean, he still currently is a bishop.
There's no way he listens to the podcast.
Oh, zero chance. No, he's a great guy.
Yeah. So you're saying that because he's a great guy, he doesn't listen?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. I don't know what that's supposed to tell you, Janet, but...
Well, she's not a guy. She's great.
Oh, I see. It's very different.
Yeah.
Eric, you're not a good guy, obviously.
A great guy. You're a good guy.
He was trying to find British people to fight on the side of the road.
Elias he's a great guy. Yeah. Very sober-minded, great bishop.
What a great guy. Yeah. Well, his brother, Elias Adams, is going to write him a letter. And, some of you might have people in your family who have left the church, and you try to, frankly, you generally just try to avoid it because you don't want to be a jerk. You don't want to well, all right, let's have a blessing on the food. Hey, Bill, you probably shouldn't pray since you don't believe in Jesus anymore. Let's have, Bill's an adulterer. Bill's an apostate. He's rough.
Yeah, he's a lot of things.
Bill's had a lot of things happen with him. And so, look, you want to try to avoid it. Elias is going to try to be kind, but he cannot help himself. Look at how quickly he goes from the pleasantries to the business. Dear brother, I received yours. Now, this letter is written February 18th, 1847. Okay, so this is being written from Iowa, and it's being written to George Adams, who's now gone back to New York. He moved back to New York. Dear brother, I received yours of August 25th, and I was happy to hear that you are well and that you was prospered in your crops.
That's very nice. That's a good introduction. It's good.
You know what? Thank you for writing. I'm so glad your crops are doing well. So good to hear that you're healthy. I was glad to hear from my old friends and that they were well. Ah, wonderful. Outstanding. That's the first sentence. But I was sorry to see the changes that was wrought in your mind since I last saw you, and the erroneous notions that you have imbibed of James Strang as claiming to be a successor to the martyred prophet Joseph Smith, and as you wish to hear from me again. There is no greater pleasure I can take than the opportunity of vindicating the right of the legal claims of the 12 in the government of the kingdom of God on earth. For being a strict observer of all the administrations and watching with a jealous eye even the very heart of the church itself, I think I can best determine the claims and the legality or illegality of them. I will not only take the book of Doctrine and Covenants, but also the history of the church itself to determine this point. Who shall preside? Look at Doctrine and Covenants, section 2, paragraph 7. It says that every president is to be ordained by the High Council. Now he's quoting section 2 from the 1835 Doctrine and Covenants. Remember, they're reordered in chronological order when they redo the Doctrine and Covenants in 1876. So section 2 for them is our section 20, if you're wondering. Were you?
Oh no, I knew exactly what you meant.
Oh, yeah. So that was.
I appreciate you explaining.
That
for
was an aside
else.
that was an aside for Eric.
I love. So, but the crops are still good.
Crops. He got it. He's like, you know what? So good to hear from you. So glad that your crops are well.
As George is reading this, he's like, as he's like going down the letter, I'm really glad he was happy about my crops.
I think George was like, okay. He probably, Elias does not,
I'm a big fan of Elias.
He loves his brother.
I'm a huge fan.
He clearly loves his brother, but he will not.
He will not. Joseph was a merciful man.
But I will not. Anyway, he goes on to quote D&C, what our D&C 20 is. He says, it says every president is to be ordained by the High Council or General Conference. Was James Strang so ordained? No, but rejected. Were the 12 ordained by that direction? They were. Section 3, paragraph 11.
Boy, he's chapter and verse in this guy.
Presiding high priests were chosen by the body, upheld by the conference of the church. Was James Strang chosen and upheld in that way? No. And again, was he a high priest? No. Nothing but an elder. Now, I don't know if that...
Well, look.
Here I feel like Elias is...
So elders are great, but you're not going to start your own church.
Well, James Strang did.
Right, but he ain't nothing but an elder.
Well, I kind of goes against the I'm just an elder talk. That was for a different reason. Yeah. But obviously, no, nothing but an elder is exactly how he puts it. Just nothing but an elder. Again, making the point that only a high priest can lead the church. You can't just have anyone who you want to lead it. That talk is from Elder Bruce R. McConkie in 1974, and then part of it's reprinted in January 2003. And he is not a fan of the idea of saying that you're only an elder. In fact, he says, when someone asks, what office do you hold in the church? What is your priesthood position? An answer comes, oh, I'm only an elder. Only an elder. This is all exclamation points. Only an elder. Only the title by which members of the Council of the 12 is proud to be addressed. Only the title which honors the president of the church who's designated by revelation as the first elder. Only the office to which millions of persons are ordained in the vicarious ordinances of the Holy Temple. Only an elder. Only the office which enables a man to enter into the new and everlasting covenant of marriage and to have his wife and children bound in with an everlasting tie. Only the office which prepares a man to be a natural patriarch to his posterity and to hold dominion in the house of Israel forever. Only the office for the receipt of the fullness of the blessings of the house of the Lord. Only the office which opens the door to eternal exaltation in the highest heaven of the celestial world, where man becomes as God is. Only an elder. Only a person ordained to preach the gospel, build up the kingdom, and perfect the saints. Every elder in the church holds as much priesthood as the president of the church. No apostle can or will rise higher in eternity than the faithful elder who lives the fullness of the gospel law.
Beautiful by Bruce R. McConkie. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's not what Elias Adams has to say. Was he a high priest? No, nothing but an elder. I don't know Elias Adams, but I want him. Well, I know another Elias Adams. Yeah, just not the right one.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. When he put his claims, again, you will find, so it gets he's super legalistic here. I mean, he's quoting chapter and verse. He's saying, go check the receipts on X and you'll see. And again, this is his brother. Crops are fine.
Well, he heard that they were good.
Well, because George had written him and said, hey, crops came in okay. By the way, James Strang's the new prophet. And so anyway, the 12 form a quorum equal in authority and power to the three presidents previously mentioned. See also the same section, paragraph 31, which says one must be appointed to the high priesthood to preside. He shall be called president of the high priesthood of the church. Now, as I said before, Strang was not a high priest, but only an elder. Sorry, Elder McConkie. And his claims are untenable. And in paragraph 37 of the same section, you will find that they didn't have verses back then. So you had to cite things by paragraph. And the paragraphs were very large. So it was much harder for you to do scripture chase. I mean, actually, it's probably easier. Paragraph 18 contains what we'd have 5 verses in it. But anyway, paragraph 37 of the same section, you'll find that if one of the three presidents transgresses, he should be dealt with before the common council of the church. Was therefore Joseph cut off by them? No. Was Brigham Young or the 12? No. Was James Strang ever acknowledged by them? No. And in the same paragraph says that their decision is an end of all controversy concerning him, clearly setting forth that God has already established the correct and undeviating order from which he himself will not depart. And if James Strang or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel, let him be accursed.
It's kind of fun to see that flipped on somebody,
you
not turned on us.
Yeah. Every time I heard that, it was from a pastor. But Joseph Smith had the appointing of one for the purpose of receiving commandments if he should be taken by death, according to the section 14, paragraph 1st and 2nd. For if this gift of receiving commandments and revelations was taken from him, he should not have power, save to appoint another in his stead. Now, did Joseph lose this gift? No. See section 85, paragraph 2nd. The keys of this kingdom shall never be taken from you, Joseph Smith, while thou art in the world, neither in the world to come. If you turn again to the 16th section, 2nd paragraph, it speaks of a regularly established order. For verily I say unto you that he that is ordained to me shall come in at the gate, and be ordained as I have told you before, teaching those revelations already received, and shall receive through him whom I have appointed. From what I have already quoted, you will see that it amounts to this, that the appointment must be made by Joseph Smith of a president to succeed him, and also that he must come in by the general voice of the church or the high council, and that his ordination must be by an angel? No, but by Joseph Smith also. Of course, Strang was claiming an angel had appeared to him. Has all the gifts. Joseph Smith also has all the gifts which he bestows upon the heads of the church. I think if you look at these things, you will find it is ridiculous for a man to assume that he has the appointment of prophet, seer, revelator, or anything else by the hand of an angel or by anything else when God has established his kingdom and given an established order by which we must be governed. I'd like to send Elias Adams to all of the snuffers in the world today. right? All of the people that are following these various apostate groups that are all saying the same thing. Oh, yeah, Joseph Smith was a prophet. And then, like, after that, there was, like, no more prophets. But luckily, I'm the new prophet. Right? That's basically what they're...
Yeah,
I think
that's a good paraphrase.
That's in their literature. Yeah, I think that's safe. But Elias Adams is saying this very thing. I mean, he is saying God already established a precedent whereby this authority gets transferred, and now you're just deciding that that James Strang doesn't have to follow it. Why did God give us all the precedent if He doesn't have to follow it? God has a fixed plan and a purpose and a rule by which He has laid down that so plainly that it would be inconsistent with His nature to deviate from it. And you will find that the keys of the kingdom have all been given to Joseph by the administration of angels, and that the greater Melchizedek priesthood holdeth the keys of the mysteries. Therefore, in the ordinances thereof, the power and the godliness is manifest. He goes on to quote again more and more scriptures. This letter is so long, I'm not going to be able to read all of it, because he's really giving him the business. I mean, he's reading him the riot act as he deploys the water cannons. Neither shall anything be appointed to any of this church that is contrary to the church covenants, for all things must be done in order and by common consent in the church. And to show that a greater power of godliness will be exhibited in the ordinances given to the church than any other course that could be pursued by even by angels themselves in the government of this church. Goes on to quote some more things, but he says, hypocrites shall be proved by them, and they who are not apostles and prophets shall be known. I could quote a great deal more on this head, but I think I have perhaps stated enough to satisfy. Now, I promise to say a little about church history. First, did Joseph appoint any to succeed him after his death while he was alive? He did. He imparted the keys of the kingdom, equal with himself, and Brigham Young was their president. After he had done this, he commissioned the 12 in the following language. On you I have placed the burden of rolling off the kingdom to the nations of the earth and building up the kingdom, and a great deal of more of the same import. If you would ask, is Brigham Young a prophet, seer, and revelator of the church? I would say yes. So are the 12, and so are many others in this church. But Brigham is the president of the whole church. But do they get revelations? They do. But then why not publish them? They do. Brother Orson Pratt brought us a written revelation the other day, giving us a much important instruction relative to our journeying west. D&C 136, exactly what was referenced in our question. See, we do get back to answering the questions.
An hour later.
Well, I mean...
I wasted everyone's time for about the first 15 minutes, so about 45 minutes later.
I mean, a gangrenous antelope can only take you so far. I see that I am filling up this letter, and I've been doing well since I've been here. Then he starts going so he has just read his brother the riot act and told him how wrong he is. And now he's like, I put in a grist mill since I've been here. How are you? And here's what's funny. So he tries to get back to being a brother, and he's like, I'll have to say something about my moving to Jane. I will close my epistle by saying that I pray my Heavenly Father that you will give the subject that consideration its importance demands, for I know that by following James Strang, you are following a false prophet, and you cannot get into celestial glory. See you at the family reunion. Elias Adams is quite adamant. And if you follow him for any length of time, you will find that he is on a sandy foundation. But I hope better things, and that you will be prepared to go with us by the time the grass grows. See, he still wants George Adams to come back. Come with us on the journey. And bring as many with you as you possibly can. I know that it will be for your salvation, and by doing so, you will be a savior of men. What I have said I know is agreeable to the doctrines of this church and the mind of the Spirit. Write me as soon as you receive this. I remain, as ever, your affectionate brother, Elias. So that's, maybe not as affectionate as it could have been. But
well, I mean, he loves his brother. He wants him to come back.
yeah, he wants him to stop.
And so he's strong. And it seems like Elias, he would know his brother pretty well. He would know how his brother would likely respond.
Yep.
He wants to.
I mean, he certainly made a good argument, and that's the kind of thing that would cause his brother to respond. Now, unfortunately, George Adams in our Apostates, Apostles, and Apothecaries
Part 2.
Yeah, is that what you're going to call this?
Sure. Yeah, we got to get a part 2 in there eventually. I've been promising it for 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't an apostle, although he claimed he was one. Does that?
Well, he's certainly an apostate, and I understand that he took some
kind of
sugar
leaf,
tablets.
tablet, which is literally everybody. I know we've gone a long time, and that you're all wishing this was already over. I know Richard is wishing that it was over.
I am. But they can just stop it. I mean, they don't have to.
Yeah, it's
keep
true.
listening.
I mean, people are always like, "Oh, you can't make it too long," or people get upset. I'm always thinking,
well, I do see some of these religious podcasts, and they're like 3 hours, and they do a deep dive into Ecclesiastes.
so
and
it's
you're
like,
oh
it's
my
people,
gosh.
people who are better than us.
Well, yeah, they're certainly smarter, but I mean, at 3 hours, you're just like, I mean, come on. Even the church is down to 2. Let's go.
So if they spend 3 hours on the liturgy of prayer and its history, about an hour and a half in, you're like,
there was a podcast that was referenced by a couple of Catholic priests. It's actually pretty funny when they go through that, but they go like 3-4 hours on something.
Well, so
anyway.
Let me just tell you what happens with George Adams, because it's almost more fun. I know we're out of time, so I'm gonna have to go brief here.
Okay.
Or maybe I should just do it next time.
Nope.
No, you got
What? You got another 45 minutes on
no.
this?
I just figure that we'll start the podcast next time. I'll be like, hey, let me tell you about George Adams.
You know what? Yeah, let's
You know
start.
what? Cliffhanger.
Yeah. How does
What
it end for
happens
George
with George Adams? Spoiler alert: you're never gonna believe it unless you go and look it up. Then you probably will. But don't look it up, because then it'll spoil it.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week, where we give you with the exciting conclusion of George Adams, the Shadow Knows. Thank you so much for listening and for tolerating our quirkiness, but also hopefully people feel our devotion to the gospel, and they know that this is all done in love, because we want people to gain a stronger testimony. And we don't want anyone's brother to have to be writing a letter to you, letting you know, hey, glad the crops are in. Stop worshiping a false prophet. Love, Elias Adams.
Thank you for listening to the Standard of Truth podcast, hosted by historian Dr. Garrett Dirkmott. If you know anybody that could benefit from the material in this episode, please share it with them. And for more resources, visit standardoftruth.com. Until next time.